All right, let's meet our panel, Meeting the Housing Needs of Elderly and Disabled Communities. And we'll focus on new and creative methods and resources to meet the affordable housing needs of these specific populations. Let's meet our panelists, Mr. David Newburger, who holds dual leadership roles as Commissioner of the Disabled for the City of St. Louis and co-director of the Starkloff Disability Institute. But no matter his position, he is always working to ensure compliance with ADA laws in all aspects of life, from building plans to right-of-way access to employment. Gina Hilberry specializes in the design of enabling environments as a practicing architect and designer. Her firm has extensive experience in projects from new constructions and historic preservation and renovation to commercial projects for schools and institutional uses. She helped write the book, so to speak, on the Technical Assistance Manual for Public Rights of Way as a member of the U.S. Access Board. And Mr. Dennis Kajszo, who is the supervisor for St. Louis County's Home Improvement Program. The Home Improvement Program, HIP, is a federally funded program which provides technical assistance and financial assistance to qualified homeowners for making a variety of home repairs. So please welcome our panel, and we'll let David Newburger kick it off.
Okay, thank you very much. I just thought I'd start by introducing you to the Office on the Disabled for the city. Any employer who has more than 50 people needs to have an ADA coordinator, and we have more than 50 people in the city, so I'm the ADA coordinator, and my job is very much helping the city make sure that it's in compliance with the ADA. I also help with reasonable accommodations for our employees, and then I am also involved representing the city in other projects as they come along, where I might be doing more advising than I am enforcing. And one of the big projects that we've been working on the last couple of years is the City Arch River project. We've had a team of about 25 people with disabilities meeting with the designers, and we think that that's going to be a universally designed facility for us, and we're very pleased with it, not the least of which is from the arch to the river, there's going to be a winding pathway so anybody can go down without going down the grand stairs. So there's lots of neat things going to happen. We are in the city, a great deal of what we're doing is commercial rather than residential. And both the plan examiners and I coordinate, and when somebody needs a permit, we definitely look at accessibility because the building code provides for that too, and we make those requirements. When we're dealing with somebody, for example, who is opening a new storefront and they're changing, say, from a dress shop to a tax preparing kind of institution, two different classes of businesses, then they're evaluated as to whether their facility is accessible, and we work on them according to the standard of readily achievable, which means that often they aren't spending much in the space, and so we require minimal things. You can buy a portable ramp we call a suitcase ramp. I often ask them to do that and put up a sign that says, please call our number or knock on the door for assistance. So that it's things like that to try to make businesses very, very successful. We have delved in to the standards that are involved. In my humble opinion, the Fair Housing Act doesn't go nearly far enough as far as accessibility is concerned. The standards were developed many years ago, and they're not, they haven't been reviewed or updated in many respects. And so we have worked on not only asking people to do what they're required to do, but helping them take the next step to make the facility truly accessible. Now, I know there's a lot of feeling about the North Side Regeneration Plan, which is the fancy name for the Paul McKee efforts. But one of the things that we did in that is that we got as part of their dealing with the city and getting the funding that they got out of the city, which was incentives for them, we required that they do certain things over and above the Fair Housing Act. And we went through a series of terms. Just to give you an example, the Fair Housing Act generally involves new construction. Something that was built before doesn't count. It generally involves more than 4 units, pretty definitely involves situations with more than 4 units. Instead, the North Generation Project has agreed that they will institute a number of stepless entries into units, even into townhouses. There might be stairs in front, but there will be a stepless entry in the back. And in a number of circumstances, they're going to agree to make a ground floor something that a person with a disability could use, a mobility disability, which means that maybe the living room could be converted into, the dining room be converted into a bedroom if grandma needs that, and the bathroom is big enough so that she can use that even when she's living on the second floor or first floor. And further in that, they have agreed to an audit policy so that we not only have the agreements, but we have the enforcement plan with it. Now, what I just described there, I wish we would be doing in all projects, but I can't go beyond what the Fair Housing Act it requires in other projects. So with that, I'm going to pass the microphone on to Dennis Kajszo, and he's going to describe a little bit of his program.
Hello. My colleague, Chris Krameyer, spoke for 45 minutes, no notes. I was asked to do 4 or 5 minutes, and I've got 3 pages of notes. But as Debbie said in her introduction, my name's Dennis Kajszo, and I'm the Supervisor of St. Louis County Office of Community Development. My job is to manage the home improvement program. We have a small home improvement staff. There's only 4 housing specialists and 2 wonderful account service specialists. We spend approximately $1.3 million of community development block grant funds a year, and our goal is to complete approximately 300 homes. We not only deliver the program in St. Louis County unincorporated areas, but about 47 participating municipalities. Can you hear me now? It's like, is this thing on? But I was asked to talk today at this particular conference because we have a small but unique program that helps us meet the housing needs of the elderly and people with disabilities. We're trying to find ways to better service the elderly and disabled community. We were lucky and was awarded a 2-year grant from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines. We received approximately $240,000, which would allow us to serve about 30 income-eligible homeowners with necessary accessibility modifications and home repairs. We named our program AMP, Accessibility Modification Program, and it's kind of an offshoot from our home improvement program. Our target is really homeowners with a self-declared disability or special need and senior citizens over the age of 62. Applicants must meet certain income guidelines, as in most programs. For this particular AMP program, it's about 50% of median income. To give you an idea, approximately $34,000 adjusted gross for a household of 1 or 2 persons. They need to own and occupy the property, and they must be current in their real estate taxes and mortgage. The cap under our AMP program is $7,500. However, since we couple that with our home improvement program, and that blended funding allows us to spend as much as $12,500 per house. The modifications include ramps, widening of sidewalks, doorways, hallways, chair lifts, grab bars, bathroom modifications, such as no-step tubs and showers, raised toilets, and any other special need that we can accommodate. It's pretty hard when you're dealing with an aging housing stock sometimes to make these modifications, but we try to work with the homeowner to best suit their needs. We also permit normal home improvements, such as electrical and plumbing upgrades, furnaces, AC replacements, new roofs, concrete repairs, code violation abatements, and once again, other needs that the rehab specialist might find in the home. The only obligation on the part of the homeowner is they sign a 5-year forgivable deed restriction that allows for a 20% annual remission each year that they own and occupy the property, and after 5 years, we issue a deed of release. We also have a minor educational component with our AMP program. We try to provide them with, our rehab specialists are really talented. They certified in electric, plumbing, heating and air conditioning, and structural inspections. They also do rehab rehab on their own homes. They've had some training in lead abatement and universal design. And so they sit down with the homeowner and try to help them understand their own homes, how they might be able to save money, what repairs they might be looking at in the future, what we could do for them today. We give them some home improvement literature, saving money by saving energy, along with our normal lead-based paint notifications, how to protect your family from lead. In addition, while we're out there, we try to provide to them information about websites that include such topics as free classes that they might attend, such as how to prevent heart attacks and stroke, managing diabetes, emergency preparedness, and other health-related topics. We're new at this part. We've been doing home improvement for a long time, but so there's a learning curve with our program. So we're going to take a look and see what works and what hasn't worked. We've completed 18 homes, and the other 12 are under contract and under construction, and we hope to have them finished before winter. Our grant writer is working on our second application, and we hope to get a little more money, at least maybe enough to do 40 homes. I was hoping by today I could tell you that we had received the grant, but we probably won't know until the end of this calendar year. And as usual, you know, the need always outstrips the resources available. Right now we have 98 people on our waiting list, so hopefully we will be refunded and be able to continue with this program. If there's any, we have a kiosk, for lack of a better description, with some before and after pictures, a resource center, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to talk to them after the forum's over. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you. And, next, I'm going to introduce Gina Hilberry. When I have a question about standards, I'm that kind of person who knows just enough to get into trouble. And when it's a complicated question, my solution is always to call Gina. And Gina serves as chairman of my advisory committee and has just helped me enormously with the architectural standards that are involved. She helps people around the country in many respects, sometimes working for the Justice Department as a witness, an expert witness on their behalf. And so with that, I'm going to turn you over to Gina.
Good afternoon. Hopefully the cookie sugar isn't wearing off quite yet. I'm going to make this fairly quick. And I thought, when I heard the topic, I thought a lot about how to approach it, because as I'm sure you all are aware, if you're going to talk about affordable housing or housing for those of us who are maybe a little older, and or those of us who may or may not have disabilities, visible or not, There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot that doesn't work for a lot of reasons. We need to worry about our connections in our communities, what's going on in the home, how new things are being built, how we're funding existing programs, so on and so forth. So, you know, you give me the topic and what am I going to talk about? Well, the foundation and the bedrock of what we do in new housing, new construction housing, is frequently the Fair Housing Act. So I decided to kind of base the groundwork on the Fair Housing Act. In addition, a lot of other programs that fund housing development, including rehab, will refer back to the Fair Housing Act in order to get kind of a minimal level of improvement incorporated into the project, even though it's not new construction. In literal point of fact, except for when funding agencies say you have to do it to get our money, fair housing is only applicable to new construction done after 91, I think, yes, March 31st or 13th, 1991. 4 or more units under a single, in a structure. I was about to say single roof, and that doesn't, there are so many exceptions that it gets really fascinating. So, when you're doing seniors complexes, what bumps into my mind almost instantly is obviously the big buildings with lots of units in them are covered under fair housing, but what about the 2-family villas? They're 2 families, they're not 4 families, so they really aren't covered. So that can be a problem. Townhouses are not covered necessarily, multifamily homes. So if you have a whole bunch of units lined up next to each other, even if they're all under a single roof, if they're all multi-story, they're not covered. So the Fair Housing Act has these gigantic holes that really don't help our community. So the more you apply it, even when it doesn't apply, the better off we all are. Fair housing is a very minimal set of standards, which I'm sure you're also aware of. This was kind of what I was talking about before with firewalls and a lot of units under a single roof or 4 units in a single structure. When in doubt, call a specialist. But there are 7 statutory requirements. They are not designed to create an accessible unit. And what you need to understand, if you're developing projects for people who are either seniors or have disabilities or both or whatever, or maybe have kids. I mean, I am convinced that housing for large families needs to be very sensitive to accessible design, because you're frequently talking multi-generational, you're frequently talking about, you know, you've raised the ante. The chances that somebody's going to have a disability, either a permanent one or a temporary one, are very high. So getting some measure of accessibility in place is critically important. Fair housing is so minimal that it is bare bones. It may address some needs for some senior citizens. If you use any kind of wheeled mobility device, it falls apart. Just in case you weren't aware of it, there are 10 safe harbors for compliance. If you comply with any one of this list of documents, you can figure that you're in line and in compliance. You will notice, by the way, that our current building code is not on that list. So if you are doing developments and they're depending on today's building code to provide safe harbor, there are some differences and you need to watch out. Just a little warning sign. They are reviewing 2009 and they tell me that it will be a long. We are talking about HUD. My favorite resource for assistance on fair housing is the 888-341-7781 number. It is a technical assistance line called Fair Housing Accessibility First. It is manned, so to speak, by a couple of women who are remarkable and who have been working in the field for a very long time and who have watched the regulations develop or not develop over time, and they can give you excellent assistance. So just so that we're all kind of on the same page in terms of what constitutes minimal accessibility, Fair Housing Act has 7 requirements. None of them include ADA. ADA applies to the leasing center and parts of the property that the public come to, not the common areas, just the public areas. So that's a frequent point of confusion. But that also means that all those parking requirements and all the things that come with ADA are not necessarily going to be developed on a set of drawings or something unless you ask the architect to do that extra step. If developers, funders, builders, so on and so forth, start asking for it, then developers will get it into the drawings. But the way it stands now, especially if you're dealing with affordability, it's very, very easy to back off and say, we're going to do what's required at a minimum. And as we all know, building to the minimum is not necessarily what's going to be helpful to the community. So requirement number 1 is an accessible building entrance on an accessible route. The folks on the table up here can't see the photographs, so I will provide a brief description. I have a photograph of an elevator to a multifamily structure. Looks like a front door. It just happens to be up about 10 steps. And this is not real. I did not Photoshop it. I actually did walk onto a property and see this, and other than scraping my jaw up, this is clearly not taking care of our seniors. This, however, is a photograph of a building that probably some of you have seen before. The sidewalk comes up towards the front of the house, and there's a couple of steps. In reality, the bushes to the right in the photograph are concealing a ramp, and that is a completely step-free entrance that is very graceful and easily used by everyone, all ages and abilities. And from the street, it has that traditional look that we all look for. So it can be done. Common errors: failure to provide a continuous accessible route, and failure to understand that the front door is the one that has to be step-free. In fair housing, it has to be the primary entry, and that does not include the garage door. Garage door is useful, but that's not the one that's required. Requirement number 2, accessible common and public use areas. The photograph is of the restroom building serving a common area pool with a couple of perfectly lovely steps up into the restroom territory. Again, yes, this is real. I went out and they couldn't understand why there was a problem. Yeah, there's a problem. To the right on the photograph is a laundry. Common area laundries are also covered as common areas. This one, it's not the most attractive laundry you've ever seen, folks, up here. But it is serviceable, and they have front-loading machines. And oddly enough, the contrast between the floor and the laundry equipment and the buttons was phenomenally good. It was very easy to see the controls. Obviously not paying a lot of, not going overboard on paying equipment costs or anything else. But they had selected products and equipment that had nice big numbers, all of us very user-friendly equipment, very transparent. They said they've had very little error with soap, which all of us realize can be an issue. And it was simply by picking something quite affordable, but sensitive to the needs for visual contrast and ease of use, neither of which are legislated. Basic pieces to an accessible route, doors, vestibules, hardware. Signage gets forgotten a lot, landings. I'm going to race through this. The one that always gets forgotten is cross slopes. Cross slopes should not exceed 2% for everybody. Makes life very difficult when it's over. Usable doors. And, oh, by the way, when the fair housing expert is coming out, don't roll out a 24-inch wide welcome mat and roll it up to the bedroom door. There's a 24-inch wide mat rolling up to a door that tells me I don't even have to take out my tape measure. There is no way that door is wide enough. It struck me as funny. Anyway. So usable doors. Seems simple, seems like something we've been dealing with. It is not so simple, gets in the way, but it really doesn't cost any more to get it right in the first place. An accessible route into and through the dwelling. Light switches, environmental controls, things like that that you can reach. I see a lot of apartments, they will get the light switches right, they will get the outlets right, but the thermostat and the security control for the alarm panel, those are the two that are off. I don't know why, but they forget them. I think it's a different contractor. So pay attention to reach range. A little snippet of information, the new edition of ANSI that will be coming out sometime in the next several years changes reach ranges yet again, raises up the lower one. So for front reach range, because they now have enough demographics so that they know that that doesn't work. Reinforcing walls for later installation of grab bars. I love plywood. Put plywood behind shower walls. It's just so simple. And then usable kitchens and bathrooms. The trick to usable kitchens and bathrooms is empty space. It's just like when you see a website that works for you, it's typically got a lot of white space or whatever the background is because you're not getting a lot of clutter. Music. The secret is silence. Kitchens and bathrooms, the secret is empty space. And it's the hardest thing to program because nobody sees it and nobody appreciates it. But it's got to be there, and it's got to be aligned with the appliances and with the sink and with everything else for it to really work. Adjustability is wonderful if you can build some in. Getting enough space between appliances and counters. Getting space in a bathroom so that you can take a wheeled mobility device in and close the door. Simple. I mean, this is really minimal accessibility. I'm still remain baffled about how somebody gets into a bathroom like this in a wheelchair and manages to use the tub, but I'm not going to be too picky. The rule is get in and close the door. So that's what's required. Plans should look somewhat like this bathroom. This is a diagram of a bathroom with all the clear floor spaces shown. If your architect isn't showing those clear floor spaces, you don't know for sure that they're there. Ask them to show them to you. And that is what we've got.
Yes.
And I think all three of us are open to questions. We're all three committed to housing for folks with disabilities, including those of us who have them as we age.
I wanted to add one piece of information, and that is that what Gina is saying is that if the money is coming through a program from a public agency, then the public agency can set the standards that it wants. And the Affordable Housing Commission you're about to hear about, but the Affordable Housing Commission established a series of standards that are significantly more useful than the Fair Housing Act would require. And we try to do that, try to find a way to leverage that any way we can. The MHDC, the Missouri, help me, what's the?
Missouri Housing Development Corporation
right.
has universal design requirements.
Yeah, and so there are people getting it through the incentive system, but not necessarily just a straight commercial building.
And problem is even the people who are getting increased requirements through incentive systems don't understand why various components are in place. So it's very easy to forget the continuity of an accessible route. You know, you've got a step-free entrance. You've got a mailbox you can get to, and they forget to tie everything together simply because they aren't thinking about the actual purpose behind some of these things. So things that seem simple end up being tricky.
Questions? Well,
Sugar hit.
We must have did a good job.
right. Or way over your head.